I guess that was going to be my next question is this competition overall going to be good, or is it making it harder for, you know, more gamers to just have the better gaming experience?
Yeah, I think overall, it's oftentimes a good thing when there is an acquisition in the gaming world, because
Mhm.
you have to imagine that a lot of these studios start off with just a handful of developers with a passion project. And anytime these small studios can get acquired by the medium fish and those medium fish get acquired by the big fish, it just means that there's kind of more money flowing into games. And I think it helps. Like it really, a lot of the time people don't realize that the gaming industry is oftentimes an underpaid sector. For the same
Sure.
type of development talent, you get paid, roughly 30-40% less for working at a gaming company, because so many people love games and are willing to do it out of passion. But a lot of some of the best known games, like even Among Us, those developers did not make much money,
Mhm.
despite it being one of the most popular games, because they didn't have great monetization mechanisms, and they were an indie studio. They could almost like not keep up with the success they were having. And so when these type studios get acquired, it's just a nice payday for these developers. It enables them to go start their next passion project with a little bit more, change in their pocket. And so overall, I think it's good. I think there's kind of never any shortage of indie studios. If you look at the amount of games that are published every year, 70% or more are indie title studios, and they never
Yeah.
really go much places because they don't have much funding. But the more funding that flows down to these type studios, the more and better experiences we're going to have as gamers.
Yeah. And I mean, to that last point and kind of just playing devil's advocate too, like on one hand, you have, like you said, more money, more investment, more time, more people, more hands. What about the other side? Because a lot of times, you'll hear about someone had this set budget to make, this thing that they were very passionate about. They allocated all the funds really, really well, and they made a budget. They did more with that because of their passion and because of, just the necessity to do so. What like, can you think of any examples, I guess, of what I'm talking about? In my mind, I'm thinking of movies, but also in gaming. Like, does that does that happen a lot?
Where the founder basically doesn't have enough money to kind of get something over the finish line, or
I
that they
guess,
kind of kill it.
yeah, no, I guess I'm talking about, like, obviously, like you said, more money, more hands-on, and more ability to make a great experience. But I'm sure there are examples of the other side where it's like we just have such a small budget, but we're so passionate that we want to get this project out. You know, are there any examples of that as well?
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I was actually talking to Will Stahl, the founder of a studio that built uh, Arma, and then
Okay.
eventually, sorry, they were building a mod on Arma, and they built Squad, which is kind of a growing tactical first-person shooter, and they
Okay.
most recently released Postscriptum, and both were like huge breakout success that grew out of mods. Their
Okay.
team was originally 3 people, and they kind of were developing a passion project, kind of building on the fundamentals of Arma. Eventually, they, based on their success with the mod, and then later their game, they built off-world studios, and it's hyper successful. So there are definitely examples of kind of studios with just kind of bootstrapping their way.
Yeah.
Among Us was another great
Okay.
example. I think the studio behind It Takes Two was also one of those studios that just kind of came from nothing and had a
Sure.
huge breakout success and was bought. So it happens all the time. And sometimes on the flip side, too much money can be the kiss of death for a company. So
Yeah, a lot of
um,
expectations.
totally. I mean, I don't know if you've ever bought into Star Citizen, but that
Mhm.
game raised over $500 million in
Wow.
crowdsourced money. And they raised it on the back of these beautiful cinematics for this kind of new type of RPG in space. It was supposed to be a whole world to kind of compete with Eve, more accessible, more fun. And they barely have more than like a couple spaceships in like a sandbox environment in a black empty space. It
Wow.
is crazy. And as one of the original kind of founders, I pre-ordered this. I put $200 in, bought the founders pack, so I could have early access and kind of, support the developers I believed in. and it's been nothing but letdowns, to be honest with you. So,
Wow.
that's another, it happens, right? I mean, I simply don't know what has happened to that money, but to me, you raise $500 million and they have what they have to show for it today. And you're like, well,
Yeah,
it boggles the mind compared to what some small indie studios can do.
for sure. And going on that, I know like you going back to like kind of the beginning of the conversation and you as a gamer, what are some of like your favorite games that, whether they're classic titles or games you played recently, what are you most interested in personally?
So I love real-time strategy games. There have been plenty that come and go. I think what kind of like really caught my fancy today is Total War. I just love like the lore into it
Okay.
and the games itself. But really, I keep up to date on like kind of a lot of the game releases. I think those be some really interesting stuff in the first-person shooter genre as player ownership becomes the concept, and you're able to kind of like buy and sell the skins that you have and kind of co-create some of these games with you. So like I said, I could go kind of down the rabbit hole in terms of the games that I played, but
Yeah.
in particular, it's our real-time strategies, like what I always come back to.
And what was the game you said is a real-time strategy?
War,
Okay.
Total War Warhammer, and
Okay.
it's a
Got it.
series. They have both a fantasy world that they've built out, and then also historical titles like Rome, Shogun, which is in
Okay.
Japan.
Yeah, I've heard of these.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
And I, I mean that kind of goes through all my questions, but I guess the more like personal stuff and getting down to like just being, like the everyday gamer. What were the games you kind of grew up playing and kind of games that maybe you still go back to or wish, could do a remaster or something like that?
Oh man, good question. I mean, as a gamer, I've always loved the games that really like they don't sacrifice lore and they don't incentivize twitchy gameplay and they kind of like stick to like the basics. So I just harkening back to like Modern Warfare 2. I thought that was an amazing game.
Yeah.
Just kind of prestiging your way through those. I've tried to get back in those lobbies and they all end up being kind of hacked or cracked, where
Ooh,
everyone in there is just like way too good,
yeah.
or they're just hacked lobbies. I wasn't able to. Pulled up my Xbox 360 and I couldn't join a lobby. There was nobody in it, but
Dang.
that was a great one. Battlefield 3. I mean, the destructible terrain was awesome on that, and
Okay.
the way that you like leveled up your class systems, right? I mean, like I don't know if you ever like were sniping with bolt actions on Battlefield 3, but there is nothing that feels better than getting a headshot on that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've had just a little experience playing that, mostly just watching my friends who are way better than me playing that. But yeah,
Totally. Or there'd be some hard point right on an objective, and in Battlefield 2, you could do this as well, where you just roll up in a tank and just be like, "I'm going to shoot this building until it comes down. Like I'm done with the sniper in that building." So yeah, they don't make it like they used to. That destructible
yeah,
terrain. I think StarCraft 2, just kind of like the nostalgia of that game. I love it. Skyrim, another one that was just epic. So you can kind of, I don't know if I'm dating myself based on the games I'm referencing, but I think
no.
those were all classics.
I mean, I'm 27 years old. I'm from like Philadelphia area, Pennsylvania, and currently I live in New Jersey. But I mean, the games I grew up playing were like, I mean, PlayStation 2 was probably PlayStation 2 and GameCube were my first like systems I played on, I want to say. And then my aunt had like an N64, like that wasn't mine. I would play it at her house. But like, yeah, NBA Street was probably like my favorite PlayStation 2 game. Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront, I remember.
Oh,
And then GameCube, we would play Strikers, just Super Strikers, the soccer game, just relentlessly, and we still play that. I still have a GameCube, and I refuse to get the new Strikers Battle League. So I just want to play the GameCube one.
that's
So yeah,
awesome, man. That is OG. Is it like
yeah.
literally like is it an emulator or is it actually like the old GameCube you have still work?
No, I still have the GameCube. It still works. Still got.
Wow,
Yeah, it's sick.
man, that is OG. I feel
Yeah.
like any longer, like if it lasts any longer, you can like kind of sell it as a collectible and like
Right.
a antique at some point. Yeah, I mean that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So that's kind of my gaming background. Very casual, but more of like the games that like brought my friends together, I guess, and we would just talk shit, like games like that,
Totally, totally.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much all
What are
I
you playing
got.
these days?
I mean, my background kind of like I I worked for Treasure Hunter. OutsiderGaming was the first website that they acquired where I was the project manager for. So immediately they had all this Nintendo Switch content. So I got a Switch and I got Pokemon Scarlet, and I was just like obsessed with that. And I like I'm half ashamed to say it, but it's just like it was pretty freaking cool to like the last time I played Pokemon when I was like 12 or 13 on my Game Boy, and then playing it again on the Switch was pretty cool. And then just since then got like Tony Hawk Pro Skater, the remastered version, and then, you know, what's it called? Mortal Kombat. Like that's another like great game to play with friends. So
Oh yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big shit talking game for sure.
Yeah.
I love you can really back it up like viscerally when you split somebody in half. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, buddy. Yeah.
So
I have another question for you actually, which is have you tried out any VR games, VR, AR?
I haven't yet, and actually I saw that and I meant to ask you about it. I haven't tried any yet, but we have a writer on our team who actually did a bunch of, he has the I guess Quest 2, and he tested a bunch of products from a company called Zyber VR, and they had like golf, I guess a golf club that he could test, and then like a headset, and then I forget what else he tested. But I don't personally have any experience with it, but I know one of our writers loves it, and he's been testing products in the VR space.
Yeah. No, I'm wondering because I'm starting to wonder if like the time is now again for AR and VR. And so, but what I find consistently is that a lot of core gamers don't play VR games, and I think it's just kind of not there yet. The ones I have are a little bit arcadey, a little bit kind of underwhelming, half baked.
Okay.
So yeah, but I think I'm seeing a lot of games through different startups I speak to that are actually like pretty innovative and gameplay that like is only possible thanks to a VR headset. So there might be something around the corner. I think like with generative AI in particular, it's so useful for making 3D assets. Traditionally, like 3D has been really hard and expensive, which means that a lot of the games end up being lower fidelity because it's just too expensive to make kind of those AAA graphics and also do it in VR. So I think like we could be seeing a heyday, but it wouldn't be next year. But you know, within the next 5, I think really kind of VR could take shape, especially thanks to like Apple driving it.
Yeah. Do you have any investments in AR or VR right now, or?
We do, and I'm looking to do more. But right now, one is like a core infrastructure technology company called Mawari, and they do streaming of volumetric data. So AR, VR, volumetric is 3D data, and it's generally very dense and very heavy, and so you can't stream it. So if you're trying to do kind of a live streaming of AR, VR, it's impossible these days, and they enable that. So that's a really cool company. One or two other companies are kind of developing like AR VR experiences, as well as kind of like essentially they're working with NFTs and saying like, okay, what utility can we give it? Oh, okay, we can actually like bring this thing to life and like kind of showcase it in AR. And then yeah, I think now with like the Vision Pro coming out this year, it could totally disrupt what we think we knew about the space. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you hear like I listen to the Zuckerberg and Rogan podcast, and you hear him talk about it, and you're like, wow, like he's investing pretty heavily. It seems like he's investing pretty heavily in it. He seems pretty keen on the success of their metaverse or whatever whatever he comes up with. So yeah, like I said, I never had any experience with it, but it seems like that's gonna be the next thing. Like it'll only make sense. And for simulation games, like people love, like I was talking to some guys that were, they like racing games or like the golf simulator games, like racing courses that you'd never see in real life, or playing golf courses that you'd never see in real life. I'm a surfer, so like if there was ever a time that a game could be as real as reality, don't believe it could be, but if that ever became reality, I would be, I mean, shocked to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it'd be like, plug me in, baby. Don't take me
Yeah.
out, you know? Like,
Yeah.
make sure I have enough money to like pay for like power for 78 years and then just kind of like surf forever in the metaverse. I would. Um, that's
In
it's pretty
theory.
cool when you think. I think it's close. I think it's close.
Yeah.
One of the things before I let you go, in terms of like topics that people are talking about and kind of big news, it's not quite news today, but I think streamers are really taking over in a good way the gaming industry and a lot of
Yeah.
the media and marketing around it. So whereas before it was kind of up to like IGN and E3 to kind of like get titles out there and like make the market aware, I think more and more streamers play that role, which is good
Yeah.
because it's kind of like that one-to-one direct relationship and it's very democratized. And your incentives are, to be fair and transparent and not to just kind of say whatever somebody's paid you for. But what's kind of an iteration on that is that a lot of the streamers are now like working with hand in hand with studios to actually make the games that they want to see. So I know like Dr. Disrespect he's working with a studio called Midnight Studios. They're creating a new first person shooter that is being designed by one of the most popular streamers.
Wow.
I think there's a consortium of streamers also working with Superjoy Studios to make another AAA title. And so I think that's like Ninja, Tim the Tatman, Cypher PK, Courage, Nick Merckx. These guys are all working together with Superjoy to like release this next game that should come out this year. So not a lot of people are talking about it today, this kind of more and more active role that streamers are playing. But I think a lot of the top streamers now are true celebrities in gaming world, and they have a lot of clout in terms of what gets picked up. And so, yeah, like I think when this new battle royale drops and they've got their name on it and they really brand it, I think we're going to see kind of like a new paradigm for how games get released and how like critical it is to work with streamers to do that.
And sorry, say that battle royale game again.
Yeah, so I don't know what the name is. It's called Project V. They haven't quite released the game yet, but it's being made by Superjoy Studios, and it's we're like talking to that management team and seeing about how we can get involved. And then the other one is Midnight Studios, and so together I think they're both going to be releasing in the next year, and they're also using kind of blockchain payment rails, so like NFT pre-sales, stuff like that, because it is a lot more equitable. I think like as a player, you then own your founder's pass. You can resell it if you want. You can buy into the thing and you can sell out of it. And so, I think they're really showcasing kind of like the potential of like a forward future of like kind of what Web3 and crypto looks like in gaming. And it's not, kind of like the pump and dump shilling. It's going to be what we know and love in games with like a much more fair rail and like using blockchain in ways that hasn't been done before.
Yeah, it all seems really exciting, honestly. And like going back to what you said about just users, whether they're streamers or just someone who plays the game a lot, having more of an input, I think it's a good thing for sure. So, but yeah, I'll leave it there. I don't want to take any more of your time today, but again, stay in touch.